Hello, and welcome back to season 3 of Inflection Point Conversations. I'm Michelle Obeda. I'm a 3D artist and the host of the podcast. I took a little break for a couple of months, and I'm excited to be back with a new season and a great lineup of guests. I'll be chatting with different people who are experts in various CGI fields. Together, we'll take a deep dive into one or more of the disruptive topics that have reached an inflection point in the industry. If you're enjoying this podcast, please take a moment to like, rate, and subscribe. You can also comment and give feedback. I'd love to reach more people and grow this amazing community. Today, I'm talking with Taras Kvitka. Taras is the founder of Marygold Studio and Render Meets. His journey into architectural visualization began 10 years ago when he co-founded Submarina Studio in Ukraine, which was successfully acquired by D-Box in 2020. He came back with Marygold, which is a new brand with a fresh vision, with studios in London and Ukraine. Marygold specializes in design, high-quality CGIs, marketing strategies, and exceptional films. They've collaborated with a diverse range of clients, including Foster & Partners, Neom, Red Sea Global, and many more. Welcome, Taras.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited to talk with you, and I wanted to introduce the episode also because we've decided to talk about quality versus cost in Arch Viz, right?
Right. Yeah.
And the inflection, sort of the question that we were thinking about was, has the competitive market for Arch Viz images forced artists or companies to scale down their quality? And I guess the inflection point is like the competitive market driving down prices for various reasons. And I think it's an interesting topic that a lot of people are talking about at the moment. It's also kind of a thing happening globally, I think, but also maybe for different reasons in different countries. Um, and yeah, I think it's an interesting topic. You brought it up to me. Can I ask you why it was interesting for you?
The podcast, right?
No, the well, just the subject of like quality. So you were talking about you feel like maybe quality has gone down recently.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think about that.
Well, like to be honest, I don't remember what we were talking in the cafe in New York City, but I would say that I don't feel that the quality went up. I would tell that like that I think the quality remained the same as it was like 5 years ago.
Mm.
And even with the software like development and people have access to like way more progressive software and AI, still the quality remains approximately on the same level, and
Mm.
there are reasons why it's that like why it's so is because I think that the most important parts of successful visuals are still hard to achieve. And when I'm saying like the most important parts, I mean like composition, like color
Mm-hmm.
balance, I mean the subject in the image, and I also mean consistency, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even if you get like way more developed software, if you get some good, I don't know, like breakdown videos, like YouTube tutorials and anything else, still you need to invest years in understanding composition and the right color balance. And I think this is the part that a lot of artists still underestimate when they think if they can bring more like the bigger, like the higher level of detail inside their images.
Mm.
It makes sense.
Yeah, so I want to break that down actually. I think there's really interesting things you mentioned. So composition and color
Right.
balance, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think? Because I know, most people learn the theory of composition when they're doing art, right? And I think it's one of those things often that you understand, but get being reminded of it, especially if you've worked in Arc Viz for years, being reminded of it quite frequently is really important because you can actually forget it. Like you can actually forget to, not that you forget to, you don't understand it, but you forget to employ, good composition rules. And I guess color theory, is that also what you're talking about? Like composing with
Y-
color?
Yes, but I would tell not even the color theory, but also um, like the amount of photos and visuals that you have seen in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to see, like, let's say some specific amount of product until you get realizing, you like realize how actually the product has to look like, right? It's
Mm.
so much about your like experience, right? It's the same as if you compare it to martial arts, if we take I don't know, the mentor or the teacher in martial arts, because he was practicing this martial arts for like, I don't know, like 10 years or 15 years, his moves are way more direct, straight, and they're more
Uh,
the right one, right? So it's
mm-hmm.
so much about the expertise. But of course, when we talk about the quality, we also should divide visuals into groups, right? The marketing visuals and the
Mm-hmm.
architectural competition images, because I
Mm-hmm.
think those are two different type of products. Even if it
Yes.
seems that it is so easy to create both of them, or if you're doing like architectural competitions, you can easily switch to marketing. I would say it is completely not true because the process of creation is completely different. The
So
time,
let's talk about, just for anyone who doesn't know, like marketing images are images that are used by usually like real estate property developers to
yeah,
sell a building, right?
yeah,
And architectural competition images are used, visualization studios will do them for architecture practices to win a competition. So normally they're done in a shorter amount of time, and they tend to have to be more eye-catching, but a little bit more, the building hasn't been designed, so it's a bit more
correct.
theoretical, right? Just wanted to explain that for anyone who doesn't know the difference. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so I would say that because of the process is extremely different for both of scenarios, that's why that like the product is looking really different at the end of the day, right?
Mm,
So when we talk about architectural competitions, those visuals are mainly are directed by architects themselves, but not artists. So the
mm-hmm,
architects are really trying to find the Arch Viz studio that will provide them their vision, but at the
mm-hmm,
same time will be flexible enough. So the
mm.
architects could change things, at the last time. Okay, we know that it understand bad. So sorry, we know that it looks bad, but guys, please just do it like this because our boss needs it, or we need to
Right.
eliminate this entrance, or showcase this part of the building.
Yeah. So they're not focused on making a nice image. That's not their
No,
priority.
and they're not interested in this because this is not the goal, right? Their goal is
Mm-hmm,
actually to win the competition, is actually to make their audience think that their project is the best in this particular
mm-hmm.
location, in this competition, right?
Yep.
So like this is one goal, right? So architects are using visualizers, but they're not trying to find like the best one, uh, right? Otherwise, like everyone would like to hire Mir, right? But Mir has such a complicated workflow, so and they don't like to do comments. They are not flexible.
What's
So
the complicated workflow? I don't know about the complicated workflow. Can you explain that? Do you know?
well, yeah, I mean, by complicated, I mean that so they know their limits and they know their frames, and they will
Mm-hmm.
not allow architects to change and to tweak everything and the visuals during the process that much.
Okay, so they're more rigid. I guess that they have a rigid hold on I guess their standard or their their workflow. They're like, this is how we like to work. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, correct. But yeah, so we work with a lot of architects. So we work with Foster and Partners, and they like
Mhm.
to change things many times during the process
Yep.
before the final submission.
Hmm.
Sometimes they can even write you an email like the late hour, guys, can you change this thing? So basically, we like working with them because definitely the architecture is high end. It's one of the best architecture projects in the world, but the process is different, and we understand that they need us to better understand their architecture, and actually we help them in designing this
Hmm.
architecture because they can rotate, they can see, okay, if we apply this material or this material, right? So
So
and
they
of course,
basically able to use the visualization as a bit of a design tool.
yeah, correct.
Yep.
Correct. So they definitely use our expertise because they sometimes ask us, like, guys, what do you think if we do this or that? But I would say they still try to keep initiative in their hands. when we talk about
Mm-hmm.
art direction. And it's this process really it's looking like going back and forth, sending comments from one side to another.
Yeah.
So I would say for architects, the process is the king.
Mm-hmm.
Main part, like how they choose the vendor.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you on that. Yeah. Because they
And if
want to be able to design through the
yeah,
visuals.
of course, and they want to art direct because they also have a
Mm.
vision, and sometimes they even create visuals on their end.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you're based in New York, so like this high demand for Chinese studios in New York, architectural studios. There are so
Mm-hmm.
many studios working with Chinese agencies because Chinese agencies are mainly executive, and they just execute. So you provide feedback, and they deliver. They
You mean
will.
they don't want to do the art direction. They want to do that's what you mean by their executive. They do the work without doing the art direction. So that's what you mean?
Well, they can do the art direction, but they are totally fine to execute and to listen to the architect. And
Got it.
like European studios, instead, they will try to provide their vision, and they will try to use their vision when they're doing these images. And they will
Mm.
think that their vision is extremely important. And they will think that their vision is the part of the price and service that they deliver. But this,
Yes, I see. Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
understand what I mean?
I do understand. So it's kind of like there's a cultural difference in how studios you're saying studios in China are happy to, I guess, to give the autonomy, to give the direction, the look of the work to their client and just do what is being asked, essentially. Whereas you think more European studios or maybe US based studios, they want to have more autonomy. They want to have more control on the art direction because as a studio, I guess that defines, right? Because I was thinking, why is that? And I think most studios I've worked for want to have a like a brand, I guess a branded look like this let's say you're Marygold and you say this is I want this to look like a Marygold image. I want this to sort of have this high quality that we provide every time. So if a client asks you to do something which you think will make it look worse, that is a bit of a shame for you. Like I don't know, it kind of sucks. Like
Yeah.
what do you think? Is that what you think
Right.
the reason is?
Well, I think it really depends of your like the end goal that you're chasing. So if
Mm,
you're trying to build another mirror,
mm,
like the mirror from Norway, and you want to charge people for your art direction and for your specific vision, then you need to be really strict in your workflow. Then you need just to
mm-hmm,
say, okay, I can do this, but this I cannot do because like the result matters and it matters to me. And I have this collection of visuals that I like delivered for another clients, and all of them they have to look the same way. But if
mm,
you are working on the business and you understand that you need to deliver, that you want to make this client happy,
mm.
and this is just a part of conversation and like I don't know, like the terms and conditions between you, then probably you can be more flexible. So
Yeah, so I guess it's like your priority, right? Like, what
yeah,
does a
correct.
studio prioritize? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, correct.
Yeah, and so do you think that that's a cultural difference in general, or do you think that that priority has changed over the last, let's say, 5 years? Do you think that people's studios' priorities have changed in that they're more likely to give the art direction or like to accept art direction from their clients? Do you think that that's the case?
Well, I think that a lot of things changed after 2021
Mm-hmm.
because when we had COVID, uh, so the market was frozen for a couple of months, right?
Mm-hmm.
When lockdown just happened. Then in 2, 3 months, there was increasing demand for Arch Viz and for architecture because there was so much of this easy money that government paid to people so they could afford buying like new real estate. So the companies understood at some point that they could just build more, and there like the demand was crazy for 1 year. I would say like in 2020, like I think in spring or in summer, it went back on track, right? Like it was before the COVID, and it was really
Yeah.
booming. But then when like people faced the high inflation, like a lot of projects just went on hold, and a lot of
Hmm.
architectural projects just stopped at some point.
Yeah.
And
When
people
do you
thought,
say that's 2023?
I think 2022 probably.
2022, yeah.
Yeah, so 2020 was active, like 2021 was good, 2022 was good enough. And I would say like the middle of 2022, people realized like, oh, like the inflation rates are really high.
And things started
No,
slowing down, right?
yeah, exactly. So
Mm.
so they decided to slow down the business, and they put on hold a lot of projects.
Mm.
And at that point, there was a lot of Arch Viz studios who were hiring people. They were expanding. Architecture studios were hiring people as well. They were expecting to do more and more jobs,
Hmm.
to do more and more projects. But then everything stopped at some point, and they thought, okay, right, we have some belly, we have some money saved, so we can just wait for a couple of months. And they were
Hmm.
waiting, right? And people were waiting and waiting. And then at some point, they realized that this crisis will not end up like really soon. Plus
Hmm.
the war in Ukraine, plus the war in Israel, a lot of things changed, and people face themselves in the situation that you need to move, you need to be flexible. And
Hmm.
if you want to keep the client, if you want to have a constant revenue and then
Yep.
the cash flow, then you just have to choose. And I would say that there are studios that still keep quality and their vision over business, but there are less and less of these studios these days.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting what you just said um because I guess on one hand, you're saying that the high quality is related to being rigid with your own art direction in a way, right? Like you keep the control of the art direction of your images. In another way, being flexible
Yeah.
has another power because it is very valuable. So, I've worked in Arch Viz studios for years, and currently I'm working for an architecture practice as in-house, and I can see the other side and like or a different side of Arch Viz, the need to, like you were talking about, like designing with visualization. So, you're doing renderings as a design tool, and that flexibility that you give is actually is not just helpful, but it's really powerful. So, but you're not creating images that are highly art directed in the same way that like an Arch Viz studio like Mia would, right? Like because they're not marketing images, they
Yeah.
are design images, right? And um I would maybe argue the point of visualization is not necessarily just to make an a highly curated image. But the visualization for architecture is maybe more useful to show the building and to show the design. And that doesn't mean that it's the like, so this is where real time comes in, right? Um, if you think about like real-time engines as a tool to show a design, to show a space, your end goal is not about an image. It's about the experience and it's about showing people in real time. So actually, like even if you don't have the best materials, you have it very basic, but a client can understand the space and the light really
Yeah.
well. It's a different goal. So I'd say the quality can still be really high if your goal is to show the client the space versus the quality. So I wonder if quality kind of means different things depending on your goal. So in Arc Viz, the qualities also means different things. That was my thought. What do you think?
Yeah, well, so I think first of all, the thing that we call the quality is actually artistic approach, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
if we even talk about like the real-time product, it it also has a quality, but it's not as
Mm-hmm.
photorealistic and it's not well art directed and so on. But it actually it does the job, right? So it
Yeah.
can help architects. So we cannot say that that it's not quality enough or anything else, but it
Yeah.
doesn't have artistic approach. And if we again go back in history and think about COVID, I would also say that before this crisis happened, like the top architectural studios like Bix, Noheta, Dorte Mandrup, SOM, like Foster, all the big agencies, they were competing a little bit in the quality of visualization they were publishing on their social medias. It
Mm-hmm.
was, you know, it was, yeah, it was kind of a challenge between them, and they were choosing only like the prime Arch Viz studios for their
Mm-hmm.
publications. But then at some point, I noticed that they started publishing way more artistic images that were done by cheaper studios or probably in-house. So they kind of realized that probably it doesn't matter that much on how it looks, but
Mm.
what matters is actually what it represents, right?
So you say more artistic images. Do you mean like a bit more vague or like a bit more like less realistic, more artistic? Is that what you
Yes,
mean?
I would say more artistic.
More abstract in a way.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I say artistic, that I mean that, yeah, of course, they have to be photorealistic, but at the same
Mm.
time, they need to have some, I don't know, like not a soul, but some specific glance in them, right? So you can say,
Yes.
wow, this image was done by this studio, or this image was
Mm.
done by this studio. So,
Yes,
right,
yes, yes.
recognize the artist.
Mm.
So these images were done by people who call themselves artists, and they're probably artists. And so they could provide some specific approach to these images and make them feel, sorry, make them look in some specific way. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I see what you mean. Um, and so you think that that changed. So I guess a big part of this is also talking about the cost, right? So, how much an architecture studio or how much a property developer is willing to pay for the visuals or has the budget to pay. So, you know, when the market went down or when there was like less architecture projects and people said we just can't pay that for an image, even if we wanted to um, I guess their priority of marketing maybe went down in terms of we still need these images. We just haven't got the money to pay a premium company. We can pay someone who charges less. And do you think that that encourages them or encourage them to go and seek out cheaper studios, I guess, around the world? Like, do you think that that's a reason? Because I know that like it feels like there's been a big shift a lot of clients have started hiring people in all parts of the world, a lot of them where they can get images for cheaper. And do you think that has a part to play in it?
Well, yeah, and once again, if we analyze this shift that happened after COVID, so before COVID, we had a lot of cheap money, and economy was just, like expanding, people were investing. Everyone knew that if you're making big infrastructure project, it will be sold. We kind of lived in some kind of a predicted future. It was
Mm.
easy, right? You will, yeah, you will probably agree with me that now with all these like politicians all over the globe, like this, especially about like the right-winded ones, it doesn't feel like the future is so predicted at the moment, right?
Yes, everything seems very unpredictable. Yeah.
Exactly. And interest rates are also really high. So people had more money, more cheap money, and they could invest in visualization just more. They still invest a lot in visualization, and
Hmm.
they still buy visuals for 8 grand or 10 grand per image, but for less projects.
Mm.
So I think this crisis made an interesting shift in our industry that we will see, like in a couple of years, we will see that there will be so many studios that produce visuals for a really cheap price, and they will compete with each other who will do for less money.
Mm.
And
And what kind of price range would you say that is? Are we talking three to
I would,
five thousand or
no, I
less?
think 3 to 5 thousand is actually a medium price. I would say
Medium
less,
price? Hmm.
between
Less.
10, yeah, 1000, 1500, maybe
Mm.
starting from 500 even.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, 500 is a freelance price, but I know some studios that produce also visuals for this price.
Hmm.
Uh,
And then the medium price, you think it would be interesting to talk about prices because I guess
yeah, sure.
you have probably a good understanding of globally the different kind of price ranges and be good to sort of understand. It's sometimes hard to sort of put a number, But yeah, a medium, like a cheap price, you say would be something like between 500 and 1500. A medium price would be 3,000 to 5,000, would you
Yeah, I
say?
would say so. And then
To
the prime
6,000?
goes from 5 grand and beyond.
5 grand to 10 grand or more.
Yeah,
Per image. Yeah. Okay,
per image.
that's a good estimation. It's kind of useful tool to know. So you were saying that you think there's going to be the people who are charging the lower end of that and competing who could be the cheapest.
Yeah. And then there
Mm-hmm.
will be another side of, have you heard this phrase, the winner takes it all? There will be
The winner
also,
takes it all.
yeah, a
The
few
ABBA
studios.
song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There will be a few studios who are making visuals for 5 grand more per image.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, definitely they have infrastructure, they have expertise, and they understand the value that they provide to these clients, right?
Yeah. So as a studio director, what decisions have you been facing um with Marygold in terms of quality compromise? Have you come across this problem and have you like found way to solve it?
Well, yeah, that's definitely the case when we work with architectural studios. Although we have a quality standard list, so there is a paper that we show to our clients before start working with them on how we
Hmm.
understand the quality. And
Hmm.
like there are some specific like
Can you tell me
arguments.
what they are roughly? They one of the things that you mentioned, right?
Yeah, sure. That would be composition, color balance. So we always work with photography. So the
Hmm.
colors are always natural and we can compare them to like the naturally looking photos. Our visuals always have a subject in these visuals, like then the level of detail, the narrative, which is always present in the images, um,
Hmm.
like the quality of finishes, specifically when we talk about interior design images. I would say all of them need to look consistent, so
Hmm.
they feel like a solid work, but not like a gallery from a different collections.
Yeah.
You can also use them as you want, right? So you can print them, you can publish them digitally, so you can
Hmm.
use them in a different kinds of way.
Yeah.
So I think this flexibility, right? So this is how we see the quality. We have this list, and we try to explain this to the client so he understand what type of product we are delivering and we are trying to
Hmm.
create. But when you work with architectural studios, again, it's a little bit different thing because I don't think they're as much interested in the final product, but they are more interested in the process that you can provide. And
Yeah.
again, flexibility, maybe some discounts on high volume, maybe some other things you need to discuss them separately. For
Hmm.
instance, we also work with a London-based architectural agency called Acme Studio,
Hmm.
and they design a lot in United Arab Emirates and Kingdom Saudi Arabia. And they design tons of projects there. And it is important, so much important for them to understand that visualizer, understand the location, and the sand will look like the sand from Saudi Arabia, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But not
Yeah.
from
So
Brazil.
yeah. That's another good point because that's another thing that a studio can offer. And is that something that you feel is important to Marygold is to offer, I guess, sensitivity, geographical understanding or geographical sensitivity? I don't know how best to describe it, but you hire someone like, for example, if you have a building, let's say it's in New York, and you could get someone from the other side of the world to make the image, or you can get someone from New York to make the image. You think that the studio based in New York will have a good understanding of the cultural
Yeah.
significance of the geography. Now, that's not necessarily the case if your architecture is in different parts of the world and you can't find a studio there. You want your studio, like let's say they're going to hire Marygold, and you're based in London and Ukraine, but if you're doing a project in Saudi, you can offer that level of service to be, we will research and we will understand. Is that the case? Like, we will research and understand the area and the culture around where the building is being built. Is that something that you keep in mind, or is that something that you find is kind of limited because you can't understand everywhere, I suppose?
Well, it's definitely a selling point, but I will give you an interesting story about the New York. So we have done several projects in New York, and right after we finished those projects, I have visited the city myself. I had never been
Hmm.
there before. But the good thing about New York is that there is so much content online that you can find about this city. You can find the photo of every corner. You don't even need to hire a photographer.
Mm.
Only if you need like some extremely exclusive like view, or I don't know, like the sun position or anything like that, or
Yeah.
the other condition. But for New York, there's so much content you can find it on stock easily.
In Google Maps. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But if we talk about Saudi Arabia or even China, it can go way more harder. So to collect a really good information from Saudi Arabia, the best is to work with architects who already work in Saudi Arabia, and they can share their photos and they can share their research. Because if you work with fosters, they will share with you like a presentation of 70 pages or even more about the landscape, about the local flora and fauna, about the
Mm.
color of the sea, and they're going to be extremely picky about that. If we talk about Chinese projects, we don't have access to Chinese Google Map, right?
Mm.
They don't have Google
Mm.
Map there. You cannot just place a human on the
Yeah,
street and
yeah, yeah.
the view. So in this case, you need someone there, or you need architectural studio to have a photo, like a local photographer who can provide you a content. But I
Mm.
think it's extremely important when the stakes are high and the project is expensive.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about starting out in Ukraine, because we were discussing this earlier.
Yeah,
So, you started your first company, Submarina Studio, and you were saying that there is a big hub of Arch Viz talent, I guess, in Ukraine.
yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about why you think that is, specifically in Ukraine, and is that still the case?
Yes, that's definitely still the case. So, to my understanding about the artist location is that most of the artists are based in the place where architectural market is kind of not poor, but probably not growing enough. Uh,
Right.
this is what I'm trying to, yeah, I will try to explain this. So basically, if we have a good, so in Ukraine, we have a really good education. And
Mm-hmm.
we have universities that produce over 1,000 of architects every year.
Mm-hmm.
But Ukrainian economy specifically, even, like of course with the war and things like that, is not growing that fast. Even
Mm-hmm.
the loans for like buying the property was
Mm-hmm.
kind of were a specific, let's say, business opportunity for most of the people for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of like really educated people, talented people, artistic people who were graduating architectural faculty in Ukraine, and they couldn't find a job in architecture because there was just not so many projects going on. And there are not many architectural studios in Ukraine who work for UK or for Saudi or for China, right? Comparing to, let's say, Scandinavia or UK, most of the studios in architectural studios in Scandinavia, they work not for Scandinavian market, but they work from some different market. They work in America, North America,
Mm-hmm.
they work in South America. So they work all over the globe. So we have this like huge amount of people and they need to find the work, right? And if they cannot find the work in architecture, what else they will do? Definitely
Mm.
Arch Viz because it's so similar and it stands
Yes.
nearby, right?
Yeah.
And if we take a look at Poland, there are the same thing actually happening in Poland. Yes, like probably the architecture market in Poland is a little bit bigger, maybe than in Ukraine, although the country is a little bit smaller uh, in terms of size. But still, if you just look in the locations where most of the artists are based, you will notice that in most of the cases, the architectural market is poorly developed there. Because if we talk about Scandinavia or UK, most of the artists at Boundary in their London office are not from United Kingdom. It's so
Mm-hmm.
hard to find like the British artists there because most of the people are coming from overseas. And
Mm-hmm.
in Scandinavia, it's so hard to hire artists there because most of these people are architects. They graduate architecture and then they just go and work as architects.
Oh, I see. I see. So you're saying, people graduating in architecture, if there's a big architecture market, they're more likely to go into architecture. But if there's not a lot of like, yeah, building production, Arch Viz is a really good second option. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And do you think that, um, I guess the ability to work remotely is also a big factor in that because if you're living somewhere where there aren't really any Arch Viz studios, um, you can work remotely for a very good Arch Viz studio. And let's say if you're young and starting out, you have the chance to learn and develop in a big Arch Viz studio, but you don't have to like move.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I
Yeah.
think COVID changed this drastically, right? Before
Mm.
COVID, people couldn't imagine that they can work remotely for someone, right? It was impossible. People had to
Yeah.
move. They had to
Yeah.
apply for the job, like go on an interview, then to be accepted, and then take a buy the airplane ticket and then fly to like some specific location, spend there and work in the office. But now what
Mm.
we see in all creative industries and actually in all business all over the globe, the businesses that can afford working without office, they try to do it, right?
Hmm.
So they try to avoid office expense. And people are complaining all over the globe. They don't want to go back to the office, right? So we have this hybrid model, not us like Marygold Studio, but all of, like, this is
Yeah.
what studios are
A lot
practicing.
of places do. Yeah. What do you have at Marygold? Are you in office or are you work from home?
No, actually, we have physical office, but more and more people are asking if they can start working remotely
Yeah.
because no one wants to wake up early, then take a bus or take an Uber or take a car, drive
Mm.
for 30 minutes or 1 hour and go at work, then have a
Yeah.
coffee. So it's like it's a
Yeah, yeah,
routine.
yeah.
And I think people are also working less and they will work less because technologies are becoming more and more developed. So
Yeah.
it will be more about professionality rather than just spending hours. Yeah.
Spending hours in the office. You mean spending hours in the office or just like do you mean work hours in general?
Work hours in general, I think.
Um, you think that like the traditional 9 to 5 and 9 to 6, I guess, is not as necessary as getting images done or getting work done.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
Correct. Correct. This is
interesting.
Yeah, just things are changing and shifting. Of course, if we talk about architectural studios, like still big companies like like SOM, HKS, Foster and Partners, they still work in-house, but I think it will be changing in the future. And because so many if we look at startups like Spotify or Airbnb, they don't have offices. People don't work in offices there. And this thing actually terrifies me because I'm also an office guy. I would choose an office, and I think it's cool to wake up every day and go to the office
And
and
leave the house. Yeah.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But this is just how our world's changing, and I cannot do anything
Yeah.
with this. It's just the trend.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is definitely I feel like this is a very big, it's a big talking point between people like amongst people constantly because offices are companies are constantly changing this. So, until recently, I think a lot of people had at least some kind of hybrid, and then more and more people are saying come back to the office every day, and for people who have adjusted their lives in the last 4 years, maybe they've moved to the suburbs, maybe that they have incorporated childcare and other kind of responsibilities into their working day, now have to shift again for this 9 to 6 model, which now seems a little outdated in some ways. And to allow a hybrid allows people the flexibility, I guess. And I mean, what do you think also? Because do you like um I I live and work in New York City, which is, I think we're finding it's like the most expensive place to work in terms of salaries. And
Yeah.
so, um, So if I'm working somewhere where they're hiring people around the world, I'm now the most expensive employee they have, right? And to justify that becomes quite difficult versus um versus, someone in another part of the world where they don't need as much of a salary. Maybe they need half, but they could be just as good as me. Um and I can't begrudge that person. Like I can't feel bad that that person has work because it's great for them. Like, it's great that they are not able to get some good work and they don't need to, they're not trying to undercut the price. That's just the salary they need. They don't need more. Um, so like even though finding work can be difficult for someone in an expensive city like me, can be difficult, but it's really good. I can see the benefit for people around the world who want to develop their skills and want to get work. Like it can be this very difficult, like there's a feeling of resentment possibility, but like actually it's kind of great for people around the world, who are in these kind of countries. And so it's a hard balance.
Yeah, but Michelle, it also applies to you as well. You can change your location and you can go and live in Spain, and you will, I don't know about the taxes, maybe they will be the same. I
I
never
can go live
compared.
somewhere cheaper. It's very
Yeah,
tempting. I keep thinking yeah,
yeah,
me and my husband keep talking about going and moving to a beautiful farm, buying one of those, like
yeah,
buying a piece of
yeah,
land in Italy for, $1 that is empty, and we go
yeah.
and yeah. I mean, it's very tempting.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting challenge for big cities how they could still provide something to the citizens to stay there, right? Because
Mm,
again, like you're spending, so your investment in living in New York is not only money, is also your attention. Because when you walk in New York City, you see so many things going on you,
mm,
right? You could see people doing different stuff. You could see a lot of advertisement. You can see
mm.
different things, and you need to serve this in your brain somehow, right? So you kind of receive so much information and your brain needs to, like
Stimulate your brain, yeah.
exactly. And it's so pricey to live in big cities like New York or London, and you really need to understand the value why you're living
Mm.
there, because maybe it's not it's yeah, it doesn't pay the price, right? And you can choose just a better life. So I think we will see the shift in this, and there would be specifically with this Gen Z, uh like the generation that choose lifestyle over career, they will
Mm.
definitely doubt this idea of living in big cities. And
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting, yeah, because it used to be the default that you had to go to a big city to get, like, especially I thought with Arch Viz, you have to go somewhere where there's a lot of architecture. You have to go to big cities. So it just seemed like that, all the companies that were hiring are in big cities. That's the default. I am actually a city person, so I think being in a city does suit me. And, it took me time to find a job that, paid a livable salary that, like, you know, as long as the company you work for pays you a good salary that allows you to live, then it's fine. When you're having to like fight for that and you're underpaid, which a lot of people in the city are, I can totally see why you'd go move somewhere outside of here, and to have a better way of life. And especially if you don't love big cities, you don't have to be here anymore, like it's great because I have friends who decided to go traveling and work remotely and live in much more rural areas, and that suits them a lot. And it's like the option is nice.
yeah, but you don't need to be so radical about this. You can even move to Chicago. Chicago is like I think twice cheaper than New York. When we talk about rent,
Oh
it
yeah, I don't know
twice
actually.
smaller and it's more calm. The subway system is way easier, like it's more simple, better. It's more safe. I really like Chicago. Like to be honest, if I had to choose, I would
Yeah.
better living in Chicago than in New York
Mm.
City.
I haven't been to Chicago. I have to go.
No, and it's just incredible. I think in terms of architecture, it's one of the best cities in
It's
United States.
pretty great for architecturally, yeah. I feel like I know that as well. It'd be nice to see. I think we've covered a lot. It's been a great conversation about. I mean, I don't know that I think we've covered a lot of like the quality versus cost, right? Like, and And I think this is something that is really, I think it's very interesting, your idea of, just to sort of to summarize, the idea that um, some studios prioritize keeping a control on their art direction, and that's what the quality means to them. And that there also might be like two kind of markets in terms of like the cheapest and then the most cheapest and most expensive, I guess. And I suppose that they both serve a purpose because,
Yeah.
when people need something and they haven't got a high budget, they need to go and find the cheaper ones. And they hope to find the best of the cheap ones, maybe. Right?
Yeah. This is what I'm trying to say. I mean, if they have a budget or if they need the marketing campaign to be extremely successful, they will probably, like, the stakes are high. They will probably pay as much as like, I don't know, the visualization studio asked them, because they
Mm,
know that they will sleep. They will have a good sleep at night because they will be sure that their content will look
yeah.
on the highest level, right? But if they're so, like, real estate is so much about location and about the project. But if they are sure that they will sell, why they need to invest in visualization, right? They can
Mm,
just buy something really cheap, pay for 5 visuals, and that's it, right? They will still sell it.
yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it really depends on their perception of their projects and on the situation of the market. Like,
Mm,
if you look at Dubai, there are so many cheap vendors there because this market is booming at the moment. The competition is high, but still there are so many clients coming there, and is expanding really quickly. If we look at United Kingdom, the competition is really tough. There are not that many projects, and like the real estate developers always thinking if they're going to sell or not, because the price is really high, and the economy is not doing that good at the moment, so they will
mm.
probably invest in visuals, right? So it really depends on the situation.
Yeah. And so I guess also someone running a studio or a freelancer will have to think where they're going to position themselves within that. And
Yeah,
then that, I guess, influences what kind of clients they go after, right?
yeah,
Like,
definitely. It doesn't mean that you will not make money with the cheap prices, right? Like, if you look at McDonald's, they're selling really, like, their food is cheap,
hmm,
right? Comparing
yeah,
to the restaurants, to specifically to high-end restaurants, but they're doing really well. They're listed in S&P 500.
right.
They're making tons of money and selling like the cheaper products. So it doesn't necessarily mean that if you're selling for a cheap price, you're unsuccessful.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you can still be the McDonald's of Arch Viz Studios.
Well,
I mean, it makes sense. The business model how you described it, it makes sense. It doesn't sound appealing when you say McDonald's, but 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 it makes sense as a business strategy, I guess, or as a business plan.
yeah, for some studios and for some people, definitely. I mean, this is definitely not our path. We are planning to go in a higher end league,
Hmm.
and this is,
With Marygold.
yeah, with Marygold, we are investing in this a lot, and we're very picky with the projects we're onboarding and taking in our studio. So um, this is my goal and this is my vision for the studio. But I'm always, happy to discuss different options, right? So
Mm. Brilliant. And so thank you so much for coming and talking about this with me. Where can
thanks.
people find you? So your Marygold Studios, you can Google that, right?
Yeah,
Um,
they can easily Google that. They can find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram. I'm not very active person in Instagram, but on LinkedIn, I'm oftentimes there. So
Great. And I'll put the links here in the episode so people can find you. Um and hopefully next time you come back to New York, you'll come to 3D and give a presentation. That would be exciting too for everyone
yeah,
here. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a really great chat, and yeah, I'm excited to talk more.
yeah, me too. Thank you so much.